pleased to welcome Sonia Commissar from the Coalition of Wisconsin Aging and Health Groups. Sonia's a victim services attorney, and we had her do a program for us a couple of years ago, I believe, and then I got her newsletter a couple of weeks ago, and I said, could you please, do this again for us? And so she's here today to talk about, this time, the elder. You say it, Sonia. You say it.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. And I am glad y'all took the time to come in today and see what we're about. So, as Mike said, I'm with the Coalition of Wisconsin Aging and Health Group's Elder Financial Empowerment Project. And today's presentation's on working better together, and it includes who we are, what we're doing, how we function with different agencies, and how individuals can contact us, and kind of what our goals are. And on the screen right now is our current mission statement. Now, this has been evolving over the last 2 years. I came on as the victim service attorney for the group in February of 2022. I became the project director in May of 2023. And it reflects my private practice experience, as well as a recommitment to providing statewide services. I'm originally from West Central Wisconsin. I travel back there on a regular basis. So I'm used to getting in the car to meet victims in person, which we do a lot of because of the circumstances we find our victims in. And it also reflects my experiences with those victims, as well as with agencies that I've worked with across the state, so that we can fill gaps in services being offered to victims of financial exploitation, because we want to make sure that victims get the best possible outcomes they can get from whatever source is best situated to serve them. Now, an acknowledgement that our project is supported by the Victims of Crime Act grant. It's awarded by the Wisconsin Department of Justice Office of Crime Victim Services under a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice Office for Victims of Crime. We serve victims of financial exploitation and abuse, 60 years of age and older. Again, we are statewide. There's no cost for our services. There's no income or asset restrictions because we're not legal aid. And services are confidential, and we're not a mandatory reporter. The Elder Financial Empowerment Project does not discriminate based on age, race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disability, medical history, or other non-merit characteristics. So the forms of financial exploitation that we see primarily in our office are abusive use of powers of attorney, theft of money or property, usually by use of quitclaim deeds. And often these are crimes committed by family members, as well as scams and identity theft. So what do? We offer consultations, advocacy to stabilize victims, legal services, re-victimization prevention, and outreach. So first, with consultations, anybody can call, and you will get our voicemail, as you will with a lot of these agencies and nonprofits right now. Money's tight. We don't have full-time receptionists anymore. You're going to get a phone service 50 to 75% of the time. We arrange a consultation with victims directly, with service providers, whether that's Adult Protective Service or ADRC offices or anyone else. And then oftentimes we have consultations with concerned third parties, family members, friends that suspect abuse is going on. In my opinion, it's better that when in doubt, call. I will talk through the situation. And if it's not a matter that we can take, I can help direct people to a resource that would benefit them. It's hard out there when you have never been in a situation to know who to turn to. So I do a lot of that with these telephone consultations with service providers. I have service providers that'll call just to brainstorm a situation to make sure they've covered all the possible bases, and see if there's anything I can think of or more that I can do. So that's usually that's our first step. And then we take action to, if it's warranted and there is the issue we can help with, we look to see what we can do to stabilize our victims. Oftentimes that means we need to pull a credit report and determine if there's anything going on that they're unaware of. Oftentimes when people are scammed, the pressure tactics and that are used on them, this that creates the sense of urgency and anxiety that forces and gets those victims to act without thinking, means that they don't even recall what information they may have given. So we almost in all cases will pull a credit report, we'll assist in fraud alerts and credit freezes if warranted. And then we can help with closing and opening accounts and other issues if need be. We're here to help report the abuse. Now, we're person-centered, which means that we do only what our victims want to do, what they want us to do, when they want us to do it. So oftentimes when families involved, they don't want to report to law enforcement, or they don't initially. So that's totally up to our victims whether or not they want to take that step. We assist with reporting to DATCAP, that's the Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection, or Better Business Bureau. We do that with home improvement scammers. USPIS is United States Postal Inspection Service. That's where you report if the scam involved the mail. FTC is the Federal Trade Commission, as well as FBI IC3, which is internet crimes. Now, with a lot of this, you're not going to get your money back. They're not investigating so that people get their money back, but DATCAP and the Better Business Bureau can give somebody a black eye, if nothing else. So the next person, if they do a search, will see that a complaint was filed. And they do make some investigations. As far as FBI C3, they're going to be looking at bigger patterns. And if there's more going on and a large enough amount of money's involved, they may get involved. But part of the issue is making sure that the government knows the extent of the problem. They know there's a problem, that they think it's underreported, and the government's not going to give us money to address these issues if they don't see it as a problem. So we need to be reporting. The legal services that we provide include individual at-risk restraining orders, revocations of powers of attorney, redrafting of powers of attorney to remove an abusive agent, or to include provisions to prevent re-victimization, small claims consultations, and Chapter 7 bankruptcy or 128s, if necessary, as a result of the exploitation. But we're having issues with the Chapter 7. I thought we'd be able to do more of them, but the problem is a lot of our victims have too much equity in their homes to qualify for a Chapter 7, and we don't do Chapter 13 bankruptcies. But it's an assessment that we can make and we can advise on. And some folks don't need it because they're what they call judgment proof. So we talk people through the small claims and the Chapter 7 often in the same breath, because it often is the result of a victim that has purchased, say, gift cards on their credit cards and they can't pay the credit cards, or because they took out home equity lines of credit in order to send cash to a scammer and now they can't make their payments. So sometimes we're able to address it. Sometimes we're just assessing and seeing what other options are available. We provide victim service. We can represent, meaning we can represent victims in a criminal matter if a case is charged, and then other services on a case-by-case basis, which means, yeah, I could do somebody's divorce if they needed to divorce a spouse that would not stop participating in a scam. How can we get them help? So anybody that's attending this presentation can request a copy of a PDF of the presentation, as well as a worksheet that, or a handout that I'm going to email Mike. And you can, somebody that's being victimized, you're being victimized, you can call me directly and I will schedule you for a phone consultation and we'll go from there. I get a lot of referrals from ADRC and Adult Protective Services. When I first came on, it was coming out of COVID, and I did massive outreach to those organizations. to let them know, yeah, we're still here and this is what we're doing. And I see chats popping up. I'll get to your chat comments at the end, to make sure we get through everything. So I get a lot of referrals from ADRC. I do a lot of consultations with ADRC. And because of those relationships and that I've developed from the presentations I gave them, then when I have a victim in those counties, I reach out to those folks to say, hey, I got a victim in your county. Can I use your office? You got a conference room I can borrow? And they've been fabulous in coordinating with me to give me some space to meet victims so that that's confidential and in a setting that inspires confidence in what we are doing. I've met people in their homes. I don't particularly care for too many distractions. And I do travel to meet a lot of victims in person because part of our issue is that our victims have been victimized by telephone, by online applications, and I want them to not do that. And so if I don't want, I'm telling them, don't give out your social security number over the telephone. I don't want them doing that to me just because I say I'm an attorney. They need to know that there's steps that should be taken when you hire a service. There should be a contract. I use a letter of engagement that you need to lay eyes on them. So if I don't have somebody that's capable of meeting with me via Zoom or Teams or whatever, either because they don't have internet connection that's stable or they don't have a laptop or a tablet, if they can't read the documents, then I'm going to need to send to them because they're just looking at it on their phone. We're going to arrange to meet in person because I want them to lay eyes on me. Like I said, I need them to sign those and review those documents so they understand what this is supposed to look like. That can help them not fall victim to a service scam in the future. And then I receive referrals from attorneys and Legal Action of Wisconsin and Judicare, both of which have administer what's called the Elder Rights Project, which is also VOCA funded. They focus more on litigation. So I provide, sometimes when they don't have the time or the ability to take on a case because they're focused on the litigation, and this is more of a wraparound service like that credit repair, they refer people to me to address that. Because the whole idea is to work effectively and efficiently together to better serve our community and our victims and get them the best possible outcome. And a lot of us have been doing more of that in anticipation of some issues with our funding, which I'll talk about at the end. And so people are taking advantage of the referral system that's out there. Like I said, how it works in our office is we always start out with that telephone consultation. If there is something more we can do, then we schedule a meeting, whether that's via Zoom or in person, as I said. Last week was a busy week. We had 4 new victims. I traveled to Kenosha, which is 2 hours southeast of here. And then 2 days later, I traveled to Whitehall, which is 2 hours northwest of here. And then we had 2 in the office. So I meet with a lot of my victims in person. It's preferred, but it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be in person or it's going to be by Zoom. Initially, what we do is we do what I consider discovery in litigation terms. So that's collecting documentation, reviewing it, reviewing timelines that I have my victims prepare, and then determining if there's legal representation we can do, if a referral is appropriate, if we're just doing stabilization, and then if we are making a referral, help facilitating that, or if we're helping with a report. Because the big step after all of that discovery, getting that information together, is advising the victim as to what options are available and whether or not they want to pursue them, and whether it's pursued by us or if it's going to be through a different agency. But I like to manage expectations because nobody benefits from it in the system at all if people think there's going to be a quick resolution or if they're going to absolutely get their money back. And we've all watched TV, and yeah, it's not Law and Order. You're not going to get a resolution in a 45-minute episode, right? Takes a year to get through the court system. There's issues with evidence and victims' memory, witnesses' memories. A lot of the stuff when it involves family, there's no documentation. It's a he said, she said in court. Undue influence, proving it is difficult, even though we know it when we see it. Victims lack money for private attorneys. They rely on organizations like myself, Legal Action, Judicare, and it's a struggle for people to get staffed because the funding's not there. They can make a lot more money in private practice. So it's a shortage of attorneys working around the state in some counties as well, private or nonprofit. And then the nonprofit has limited funds as well. And then there's the fact that you can win. And if your abuser's gone through all the money, there may be nothing left to collect. So these are all factors in whether a case gets filed in civil or in criminal court. And then there's additional challenges for criminal prosecution, one of which we know in some counties it's getting past law enforcement, because I have victims that are still reporting that they're being told it's a civil matter, not a criminal matter, hire an attorney. I'd love to get all law enforcement to simply to say, it's like, I don't know that this is criminal, but I'm going to take your report. You should contact the ADRC office to see if there's other resources available. If we could get that spiel said by every law enforcement, it would definitely speed up the awareness of these crimes taking place, because when they're told that it's you need to hire an attorney, their first thought is, I can't afford an attorney, I don't know an attorney. And sometimes it's years later before they tell their story to somebody that says, oh no, we can get you some help, and they find them some resources. But there's funding issues and staffing issues in law enforcement as well. And we work hard to make sure they understand that these financial crimes are just as important, but it's a matter of resources and priorities in different counties as well. Now, if an exploiter does get charged, I can put in a notice of appearance on behalf of the victim to ensure that their rights are respected, and I can assist in impact statements and seeking restitution. But as I said, a lot of our victims are being victimized by family members, and they don't want civil suits. They don't want a criminal prosecution, in which case we talk to them about other responses that may be available. One of the strategies used by abusive powers of attorney and some home care scams is to isolate our victims from family members. So sometimes we have to, involve ourselves in connecting them to family, reconnecting them to family, friends that they may have been isolated from, and other community resources, because those are going to provide the most immediate response to them. Until you need them, you don't know they're there. And oftentimes, if I have a victim that's come in that's been financially exploited, they might now for the first time be in need of services such as Meals on Wheels, or as we were talking about earlier, transportation to the medical providers, because I've had victims where the power of attorney has taken their vehicle and left them without transportation. So in those cases, I find out what county they're in and I direct them to the ADRC offices there. They're the experts in what is available in that county. And I also get calls about benefit specialists. Again, I redirect them over to the ADRC because they have the role to play in getting them those services and assessing their needs. And again, they're the experts in the county. I have limited time. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm going to direct people to those with the expertise in those areas, and that's the ADRC office. Oftentimes I do have to explain adult protective services. There's a lot of fear out there as to the power APS has to put people in a home. I have to explain how that is not how this works. I also often have to explain to adult children that can't, in their opinion, get mom and dad to do the right thing, and they want them put in a guardianship. Well, you're not just going to make adult protective services do that, right? But they don't understand the process. And that lack of information breeds a whole lot of frustration, and it fuels a feeling that nobody cares and nobody's going to do anything, and all these people are out there getting paid to do nothing. Well, we all know that's not true. At least us in the profession know that's not true. It's coming from people's not knowing because they've never dealt with the system. So there's a lot of education being done. in a lot of our phone calls so that people understand who does what and how things work. Now, as far as re-victimization prevention, I've made a bigger push this spring to start addressing this, because if we don't, once we're out of the case, they still need to have those vulnerabilities that, if not addressed, are going to make them targets for re-victimization. And the chances of being re-victimized are quite significant. So we do what we can to assess those vulnerabilities. Do provide whatever service we're able to provide to address it. And if we're not, make a referral to at least get them on the path to addressing it. We also discuss with people supportive decision-making instruments. Now I know, and I do presentations on how these instruments can be abused as well. And check out our new website. There's a listing on what presentations we do on the subjects that you can request. But not having them often leads to a delay in detection. So we talk with our victims about what do they have, what they may want or need, because detection's crucial in a lot of these cases, because oftentimes our victims struggle with reporting. I belong to a couple different multiple disciplinary teams, and we want our victims to understand that there are people out there really concerned and are working together to address the problems. And these groups are meant to allow us to leverage the strength of all these different disciplines to get the best outcome for our victims. And I rely on them. I know about reverse mortgages, but sometimes something will come up and I need to make certain this will actually be the tool to use. And I'll reach out to my mortgage brokers that are in attendance. I'll reach out to an APS social worker, investigator, when I'm not certain about a process. We reach out to our sheriffs that attend our meetings, because again, everybody has also a different perspective. And when we talk about an issue, they can see oftentimes something right away that we may have missed because I come at it from a legal angle, where a social worker does not, where law enforcement sees something else. So that's the purpose of multidisciplinary teams. And if I have a resource, I am never shy about sending out an email asking for help. We can't, because we just can't possibly know all the issues that a victim is going to encounter when this happens to them. When I do my presentations, in almost all of them, I point out that if you have somebody that discloses something to you, you need to be mindful. They had to overcome a lot of fears and obstacles to even make that disclosure, because there is a great deal of fear in the older population about a loss of independence. If somebody finds out they made a financial mistake, they may be dependent on others. There may be physical or cognitive impairments that are preventing them from connecting with the right organization. They may fear losing a loved one if that's a family member that's abusing them. So there's a lot of obstacles and fears people overcome just to even make a disclosure, let alone report it. And then we have the social determinants that play into who they disclose to, whether they disclose at all, what services they will accept, how they respond to requests that are being made, and whether they continue in the process. So people need to be mindful when they're talking to friends and family that may be victimized, as well as service providers, that these are all things that are factoring into how that victim is going to be able to be helped and how they're going to rebound from that abuse. I also talk a lot about, I like to touch on decisional capabilities. When I first started the practice, I too, like a lot of lawyers, like the concept of capacity. They didn't have capacity. We can go into court. We've got a doctor saying X, Y, and Z. But unless you're going into court, and even then, there's a lot of litigation that can take place. But if you're not doing litigation, bringing up capacity only ends in conversation killers. If you start throwing that around to a loved one, they're not going to talk to you. They're not going to talk to APS. You're trying to put me in a home and I don't need this. And they're going to get defensive and it's going to shut it all down. And we're not going to get them the help they need. So instead, I was This was from a presentation that was given by the National Center on Law and Elder Rights. And I had never had a presentation that discussed it. All my legal stuff had talked about capacity. And I really like it because it talks about decisional capability on a spectrum where you may not be able to negotiate a complex contract, but that doesn't mean you can't name somebody to make your medical decisions for you. Or execute a power of attorney, naming somebody to help you with your finances. So it puts it on a spectrum. It acknowledges that our decision-making capabilities are affected by sleep deprivation, sickness, medication, as well as other things. So I like to point that out because if we can normalize that conversation, maybe we will have people more receptive to assistance and those decisional supports. But decisional capability is not the same. It's not synonymous with memory loss or medical diagnosis. Not an on and all proposition. And we need to presume that, yes, our older adults do have decisional capabilities. I've had more than one person respond that they've had powers of attorney, financial powers of attorney, speak to the bank, say, she doesn't have capacity. And based just on that interaction, they won't let that older adult access their money. So a lot of education still needs to be done on the subject and the distinctions between. We also talk a lot about undue influence. This was a concept that I like to throw out when I first started too, after I became aware of it, because these are the common tactics and we see it. And undue influence is one of those, we've seen it on TV, right? That's the ones on those TV shows where that gold digging second wife is using that undue influence to get the will changed, right? But it is a concept and it's the basis of a lot of financial exploitation cases, but it is hard to prove because it's hard to establish that intent. And the problem gets to be in these cases that our older adults often will align themselves with the abuser. So if you approach it wrong, people being people, they'll get defensive, they'll double down on it, and they'll go, no, I meant to do that. I intended to do that. Where anyone from the outside that's known this person would swear that but for this bad actor's involvement, they never would have taken that action. So it's a very tricky concept, despite the fact that almost every one of us will say we know it when we see it. In my presentations, I'd like to share the abuse in later life power and control wheel. Most people that are in the service provide victim services of any kind, social workers, are familiar with the domestic violence power and control wheel. And this was adapted by the National Clearinghouse of Adults Later in Life from that power and control wheel that was developed by the Domestic Abuse Intervention Project in Duluth. And I like to show it because, especially in my cases where it's families, members involved, there's a lot of resemblance to domestic violence. It's been said that domestic elder abuse is where domestic violence was, as far as our understanding of it, the general public's understanding of it, of the abuse, of the perpetrators, of the victim. It's kind of where domestic violence was in the 80s and 90s when you still had law enforcement saying it's not a criminal matter, it's a family matter, or what did you do to, you did something for this to happen. Which leads us to the just world theory, which is a theory I came across, and I found it quite useful because we see a lot of victim blaming in elder abuse yet. And so we have, in the just world theory, we see the idea is that people need to believe that the world is a just place because the alternative is too scary. And so they need to believe that if something bad happened to you, you did something to bring it on. And because they would never be so reckless or so stupid or so whatever, it will never happen to them. Gives them this false sense of security, but it also can work to justify a lack of empathy, resources, time, or attention. It's again, that concept that, you did it. We've had people told, well, you signed it. Credit card company said, well, you gave them out your credit card information. What do you want us to do about it? You signed the quick claim deed. You should have known better. And they get it from all different sides. So it really does impede the victim obtaining services when they are afraid that this is how they're going to be treated. In almost all my presentations, I have handouts on warning signs, what to look out for. This is just a small piece of it. I don't in my presentations go through them because there's lists and lists and lists, but I do have tip sheets. When I do presentations in person, I bring a lot of that with, and that comes to our outreach efforts. These are listings of the presentations we currently have available. And as Mike said, yes, I have a newsletter that I've been doing since December, and it comes out every other month because that's all I'm able to do at this point. Hopefully we'll be able to do it more in the future. We have brochures and rack cards, and we have handouts that we have for all of the presentations, as well as publications from the Federal Trade Commission and CFPB, which is a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. If anybody would like brochures or rack cards or any more information, feel free to send me an email. If you want rack cards, give me your email, your mailing address, and I'll get some out to you. There's on our new website, there's a place to request a presentation. If you'd like information about any of those presentations, you can feel free to shoot me an email and we'll schedule a telephone call about it. And again, I'm going to be sending a PDF of the presentation to Mike, as well as a handout that he can share with you. And I'm going to take a look at the chat box here. Oh, okay. So we got, what is DADCAP? DADCAP is the Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection. They have a ton of information on their website about the different scams that are going on. And it's also a place where you can report scams and exploitation. As I said, I've used it to report home improvement scams, those contractors that have been misleading. And oh, Mike answered that. So let's see, what else do we have? With married victims, the Marital Property Act is problematic because, if your spouse racks up credit card debt, it's very difficult. The default is that it's for the benefit of the marriage. So if your spouse takes on, buys a bunch of gift cards with his credit card in response to a scam, and you get sued, the one spouse may have a claim that it was not in the best interest of the marriage, but you're going to have to fight it in the court proceeding because the default is any debt incurred during the marriage is done for the benefit of the marriage. And now, while you should be able to you're not supposed to be able to encumber your property with a lien, so you shouldn't be able to get a home equity line of credit. But if you have an existing one, I think you can go in and take the money out without your spouse's knowledge. So it can be problematic in that regard. And it would be a fight in the divorce. I think in the divorce, if you actually did a divorce because of an exploitation case, you'd probably be more successful in assigning that debt to the spouse that fell victim and not being responsible for it if you were the innocent party. But again, it's all going to be subject to fights because the default presumption is that everything is considered for the benefit of the marriage unless you can establish it. So you'd have to literally go and buy $1,000 worth of gift cards and then establish that it wasn't anyone's birthday. So it can be very problematic. So I don't know of any agencies that are doing rep payee work. Usually for representative payees, rep payees are family members are getting named. So I don't know what agencies and insurance would be responsible for the bonding of that. I'm assuming they would have to be bonded. But I don't know that if you have a family member that you have named as your rep payee, that they're going to require a bond. You may be able to request it. But oftentimes, like in guardianships, you don't have to you don't have to require it. So if any agency, I mean, I haven't had direct response interaction with focal points. But if there's a financial, oftentimes we do see a lot of what they call poly-victimization, which simply means you got lots of different victimizations going on. So oftentimes in neglect cases or even self-neglect cases, the reason for the financial situation is because somebody had exploited them. And so in such a situation, I do more of this with APS where they have, they have the extent that they're allowed to work with a victim. And if there's more that needs to be done on the legal front, then I have been brought in so that while they're doing their investigation, I'm working on some other aspect to address the financial exploitation. As far as the recovery, um, the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office, now they're the ones that are going to be responsible for those criminal cases that fund us. The Consumer Protection does do it. You see a lot, if you can follow the Consumer Protection Bureau's notices. I get notices from them almost daily about actions being taken. But I think that the problem now is that we have limited resources. And so unless they have a big actor where they can get big money from, it's less likely that they're going to pursue little things. That's why it's so important that we can report so that they can see the big national trends and see similarities and maybe go in that way. But I think part of the problem with the recovery effort has been that I think we're just finally now working our way through the backlogs that took place because of COVID and the fact that it took an awful long time for some of the court system, especially on criminal matters, to figure out how to do a trial. And some you couldn't because you couldn't do a jury trial without having them in person. So we're still working our way through it. So that put a big crimp in things. Yeah, and that may be, and I would assume that the bridge programs are bonded, but I can't attest to that or speak to that. Um, I can't really speak to how long it takes because it really depends upon what's going on, response times of victims. And I'm just now getting to the point where I'm going to be able to litigate. So I don't have the experience with actual litigation cases. Once I get a referral, we usually get people in within a week or two. We're able to meet with them and start working on the stabilization portion. But depends on the complexity of the case as to what we have to analyze to make that next step, whether it's something we can do or make that referral. And one of the things that we're struggling with right now is the fact that because we're VOCA funded, we just had to reapply for the grant. It was a competitive grant cycle, and there's huge cuts coming to the budget. There's only 2/3 of the money being made available statewide under the grant. That's going to impact the Elder Rights Project at Judicare. It's going to impact Legal Action Wisconsin. It's going to lose a lot of the funds for that project, and they're scrambling to find money to replace it. Because there's a cap on how much each organization gets. So we're not taking any litigation cases that are going to, even though we're just now situated ourselves for that, we're going to be waiting to see what the announcement for the funds are going to be, if we're funded or if we're funded at the amounts we've asked for. Because, if you start an action in court, it's going to be, once a court action starts, you're still looking after a year after that. Almost always for litigation, you're looking at in a year's time in court system. To get you to court is going to really rely upon the complexity of the case that they have and whether there's a case to be made and getting through what evidence they do have. Well, from family members, what preventative steps do you suggest for seniors to avoid financial abuse from family members? One is get things in writing. There's a lot, and I understand it. We never want to believe that somebody in the family is going to treat us badly. But the use that I see is, the quick claim deed. I'm gonna quick claim you the property. You come move back, if you move back in here and take care of me, maintain a life estate on that property so that they can't then evict you or sell the house out from underneath you. Powers of attorney, there can be provisions included in powers of attorney that make it so that you have an inventory done and you require an accounting so that people are less likely to stick their hands in the cookie jar and there's more oversight of it. Because a lot of people just rely on these verbal agreements that when it comes to a court action, there's nothing to support it. When it comes to financial abuse from family members, don't do joint bank accounts. People do it out of convenience. People do it because the bank suggests it. Powers of attorney, for all their faults, do come with fiduciary obligations and responsibilities that are legal and can be punished if they're violated. So it's better than the alternative. But yeah, you have to take precautions. You need to talk to people to make sure you understand the documents that you are using and that you have those precautions and that language in there to help protect you. You need to be vigilant. You need to be reviewing your documents. You can't just anymore hand over your finances and say, please help me, and then ignore it from then on, because that's just inviting bad actors. And other family, you need to be mindful of what other family members are doing, because so often I get calls from family members that they haven't been in touch regularly, but now that something's happened, now they're concerned and it's been ongoing for years. So it is a very tough situation, but being involved, asking questions, normalizing those conversations, and getting over the idea that we're not going to put it in writing because it's family members and they're never going to do it. We need to get past that, because I'm here to tell you it happens all the time. Oh, okay, you're with legal action. Yes, it very much does depend upon the goals of and their legal issues, how long it takes. Because like I said, oftentimes my victims are often being victimized by family and we're not filing suits and we're not reporting to police. They want to stop the bleeding and move forward and be secure in that knowledge. And yeah, we're just now starting with the representation on the elder abuse or individual at risk restraining orders. But given our situation, again, we're kind of in a holding pattern with the stuff we're doing in court until we get some idea as to what's going on come October 1st. And I haven't been interacting with the Dane County Area Agency on Aging Legislative Committee. So if you can put me in touch, that'd be great. I've only been in this area of practice for now 2 years. Prior to that, I was doing private practice, family law, and bankruptcy in the Dane County and surrounding areas. So I've had a very steep learning curve and learning the players in the area and establishing, our referral base and getting our victim services up and going and doing those in-person meetings. So it's been a lot of moving parts, but right now I'm situated to focus on the law, focus on getting our victims served. We've got all our infrastructure in place to move forward and work with other agencies more. And so I'm always willing to meet with, talk to, and discuss how I can fit into their referral process and speak on my experience.
Oh, I
And now
really
there's
appreciate all of the discussion, everyone. This is terrific. Uh, Sonia, I just wanted to bring in for a second Lisa Klepek from the Oak Creek Police Department. Lisa, chime in a little bit with what you're seeing over in Oak Creek and experiences you've had.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Sonia. This has been a really interesting, informative presentation. We do see quite a bit here. I mentioned to Mike in the private chat that I personally, and I'm the one who asked about family members, because I personally know of someone who gave power of attorney, gave access to a checking account to a relative who then took quite a bit of money from her. And unfortunately, she had given her access. So we are seeing some of that. There was a little bit of gaslighting going on in that situation, where she got very upset. And her abuser actually called the police and claimed abuse. So, that kind of situation we see. I mean, I work directly with a lot of our banks, because we're seeing a lot of people coming in. I mean, one of the things you mentioned was somebody taking out money from their 401k, or taking out money in a home equity, and giving it to people that they meet online. So we are seeing a lot of that kind of stuff. And I do a lot of senior talks talking about scams. We have quite a few, we have a senior center here where I do a monthly talk on some kind of topic. And we see quite a bit of people just telling me all the time about all the different things that they're trying to fight against, people coming at them, trying to see how they can get money from them. So it's unfortunate. It's ongoing.
No, absolutely. And I deal with a lot of rural Wisconsin too, and that adds a layer because of they're known parties. And so you have adult children that are doing the exploiting,
Yes.
and they're making statements about the health of the older adults. And instead of, and I've had attorneys in these communities too, that are just taking it upon because of their word. They said, yeah, I'm the power of attorney. They're not getting the docs that support it, which you absolutely should. But because you have this level of familiarity and it's a problem, we've got, when you're dealing with the banks, I still have bank personnel that they get handed a power of attorney and they say, oh, do you want to put them on the bank account? No, you don't need to be on a joint account. But because people don't know, and they don't like to look like they don't know, that they'll just assume, oh, I must need this, because why would they suggest it? Now they got to join a bank account that this family member's helping themselves too.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I don't know what you're seeing, but I mean, part of the issue I see is older adults that get placed on the defensive because they're embarrassed and they fear a loss of independence because they made these mistakes with their financial. They don't look at themselves. They don't want to be considered a victim because that looks like a weakness, but they don't want, they are a victim. They've been victimized. It's criminal. And if you don't acknowledge that, well, then you have to accept that you made a mistake, and then you don't want to disclose that. So what I have are these dynamics in the family where people don't talk about it. So then it goes on and on because the victimizers are telling them what to say. I've seen that. One of my victims did take out a home equity line and maxed out her home equity line. And she went in there and drained her bank account the day before and asked for it. And she got $20,000 out in $100 bills. And they asked her apparently, and she was told to lie, and she was told to say it was for home repairs or improvements. And they gave her $20,000 in $100 bills that she promptly put on crypto.
Oh, gosh.
And then the next day, well, of course, they asked for more money because, oh, she fell for that one. Let's go sort some more, see what more we can get. She went into the bank, same bank, and asked for $30,000 from her home equity line. They didn't have enough cash available. They sent her to another bank branch so that she could get $30,000 more in $100 bills. And then she did the same thing. And because she didn't have any of these supportive decision-making documents, which wouldn't have prevented it unless she had a trusted third party, so that the bank could have called and said, hey, she was in here yesterday and something is got to be wrong here, right? But never happened. And then when she then went the next step and tried to get money out of her family, and that's when the red flags came up. And then the family's upset, right? That's what we get. We have people that, people are confused, people are upset. Then we have angry family members involved. And it's a lot for all of us to try to sort through the family dynamics on top of the criminal elements, the legal elements. And like was said, sometimes they don't want you involved. They don't want civil suits. And so then legal action and the Elder Rights Project and myself, we're just looking to stop the bleeding and stabilize them and direct them to other agencies to, fill in for the fact that I've had people that now they need state assistance. They're gonna have to apply for food share
Yeah.
because their savings are gone and they've never been in that position before and they don't know how to do it.
Well, and that's one thing that happened to this woman, this friend of mine who, she turned over control. Her granddaughter took a lot of money from her, and suddenly as a church, we were trying to support her until her next Social Security payment came through, which was really unfortunate. But we also, just to your point, them not wanting to admit that they've been a victim. We have a woman who has been told by her bank, by her daughter, by police. We have sent officers over there to talk to her. She continues to take money out and she does not want to believe that she's being victimized. And it's really quite disheartening when you see it, unfortunately.
Sonia, when you
No,
have
agreed. All we can do is what we can
situation
all
like that-
do. I'm sorry, Mike,
Sonia,
what?
I'm just wondering, Sonia, when you have a situation like that where a person is still in control of their own resources, their accounts, their house, all of this kind of thing, and yet, they're not acting rationally. What can be done? Lisa, if you've come into these, anyone who's done this, I'd be interested to hear how you get some rationality brought to these people.
It's hard. Well, it's hard. As you just heard, yeah. You can have they can be getting information from all different perspectives, and some of them will not listen to any of those professionals or family members. And I'm in a difficult situation, as is a lot of service providers, because we provide services to victims. I don't provide services to their adult children or their loved ones that are trying to give them assistance.
Mhm.
I need a victim that acknowledges that something's happened and they want help. So when I have that adult child that may be calling saying, she's out there draining her bank account, she's mortgaged the house. What can I do? Well, one thing I try to tell them, okay, this is how you approach it. Don't approach it with capacity. Don't start, attacking that new caregiver that they are aligned with. Because the way we approach them, that initial contact can make or break the discussion. Because if you come at them with that, let's say incapacity, you're not acting rationally, you've got your incapacity, we're gonna have to take away this, or we're gonna get control. You do that, they're gonna get defensive and they're gonna double down on a bad decision, because people are people. I have a mother that I swear, if I come at a situation and a comment wrong, she will double down on a bad decision before she will agree and change direction. And it's hard. People don't have a lot of time. And, if you've got those adult children that have kids and are dealing with aging parents, they get short tempered, and you've got all this family dynamic. So a lot of it does depend upon how you approach that subject, whether you do the victim blaming, whether you attack, you come at it with, you're not acting rationally, what is wrong with you, or how could you be so stupid? You start making those contacts, they're going to withdraw, and then they're going to try to rationalize and justify what they've done. And it's going to take an awful lot more effort to get them past that, to accept it. And sometimes people are really hard to reach, because a lot of their identity can be wrapped up in their previous jobs. And if their previous roles were, say, with financial management, and now they're being targeted, no, they want to know that they're still in the game and they're still capable of doing this. This doesn't happen to people like me. It happens to other people. And they really will be difficult to reach, because I've had social workers try to bring in attorneys to meet with victims, hoping that they'll listen to an attorney because they're dismissing social worker because, you're just a social worker. What do you know? So we will have that type of dynamic playing out too. So, you're law enforcement, what do you know about, finance and things like that? They will rationalize it if it's approached the wrong way, I should say, but it's hard to know which is the right way, because at some point, how do you get through And it gets very frustrating to those people trying to do it. But I cannot get involved. I can consult with those third parties, but I can't represent unless I have a victim willing to say that they've been exploited or defrauded. We do try to get away from that victim tag by saying that, you know, you have been defrauded, you've been scammed. Talk more about that than as victims, because a lot of people don't want to equate themselves as a victim. Tell them they got ripped off and you're better, right?
Yeah, and I would agree with that. That is one of the things that I do when I have conversations and do the presentations that I do. I remind people that most scammers, especially scammers that you don't know, are professionals at what they're doing. But that, you know, people need to remove that blame from themselves. They should not be blaming themselves for that because of the situation that they were put in. You know, and one of the things that personally, as someone who has you know, the responsibility for elderly parents and has seen my own husband have the responsibility for elderly parents, making sure that there's more than one person involved in the financial decision, whether it's, you know, a couple of children or a niece and a child or whatever it is, trying to make sure that there's not just one person that's involved, because that I feel like can lead to some issues. Making sure that there's a little bit more of a team approach to helping a parent rather than just one person.
Anyone else? Please jump in here. We got a couple of minutes left with Sonia and Lisa as well. Thank you for jumping in there, Lisa. Really appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Nobody else?
Well, I'll just close it out with, you know, like I said, you're going to get my contact information. Anybody that wants more information, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. And also, when in doubt, reach out. So if you suspect something, it may or may not actually fall under this, but those of us that work in the field are better situated to direct you to somebody that can help you with that issue. It's really overwhelming to try and find the help you need, unfortunately. Like I said, we have a new website. We're hoping it makes us more searchable. And so people are quicker to find us instead of just relying on referrals. But when in doubt, call. Let us sort through what's going on. And we can direct you to law enforcement. We can assist you in getting you to ADRC offices or some other agency that may be better situated to address your issue if it's not financial exploitation. Because so much of the time people struggle with putting, like I tell people, you know, we know some of us have better Googling skills, right? We know what word we need to use to find the product we're looking for, whether it's a service or something. But when you're not used to and familiar with what is going on, it's going to be harder for you to do that. Okay. And you can spend a whole lot of time doing that. Somebody asked for my email, so I'm going to set that in here quick. Oops. I could type this morning. Because yeah, it's easier for us to sort through what the scenario and parcel it out and direct you to. Because like I said, part of the issue too in these cases is you've heard is that there's a lot of moving parts that going on. You know, you could have people that now need housing help. They need food share or Meals on Wheels. They need transportation. They need a report to the police. Maybe they need an individual at risk restraining order to get somebody off and ordered to stop acting on that POA. That's the one I've seen. I assisted somebody with a revocation, talked them through the revocation of a power of attorney. And the agent said, yeah, I don't care. And so they were going to continue to act until they were stopped. So when in doubt, whether it's for yourself, for a loved one, neighbor, call yourself and then you can find out or have them call us. Otherwise, like I also said, yeah, Elder Rights Project at Judicare or at Legal Action also can assist too. And there's a lot of people in need. So there's more than enough work to spread around the whole group and the whole state.
Super. Well, thank you so much, Sonia, for a wonderful hour packed with information. And if anyone would like Sonia's presentation PowerPoint, feel free to let me know. I'll have it here to send out to you. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great presentation.